Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting on September 14, 2021. I call this meeting to order. I need approval of the minutes for the August 10, 2021 regular meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to communications from the audience for items not listed as a public hearing on the agenda. You can come forward at this time. If they have an asterisk next to the letter, they will have a public hearing on the agenda. If you have the agenda in front of you, there's agendas in the back of the room there. Mark is walking towards them. If you'd like one, you can have one of those. And if it has an asterisk next to it, which everything today does, so so yes. Yep, no problem. All right, moving on to new business. 317 Central Avenue, special land use approval request to decrease the amount of commercial use space per section 39-2.11C3 for proposed mixed-use building with 4 residential units and about 878 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The applicant is Fusion Properties, LLC. Did you want to describe this project first, Mark?
Yes, I'm going to walk us through the staff report. I'm not the author of the staff report, just incidentally. Mark Vanderploeg wrote the report, but is unable to be with us this morning. He's on the West Coast.
It's evening, Mark.
Pardon?
You said this morning.
Oh, did I say this morning?
That's all right.
It's been a
It's
day.
all right.
Yep. All right, so you just introduced the core project. And again, yep, as you said, there's kind of 2 elements here. We need a special land use review, and then if that gets approved, then a site plan review as well for a mixed-use building with the 1 principal commercial unit on the main level, and then 4 residential units kind of built around that, 3 of which have office spaces on the main level as well, the first floor. We are in the neighborhood mixed-use district. And if I forget to advance the report, feel free to, oh,
We see you.
you don't know what I did. You got an idea?
But you should be able to. There you go. That's as big as it gets. But you can scroll through that and read off that screen.
But how do we get this on their screen? Hold on. No, I don't know how that happened.
Technology is supposed to help us, right?
Here we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So if I fail to advance the report, just give me a nudge and I'll catch up. So yes, we're in the neighborhood mixed-use district, surrounded by the TNR on all sides. In terms of the dimensional and design review standards, if you kind of just scan that table there, you'll see in the compliance column that all the setbacks are in full compliance with the UDO. You'll see an asterisk there toward the bottom on the right, and we will circle back to that at the appropriate time. But in summary, that has to do with the fact that, well, it's easier to explain with a graphic, but the 3rd floor, there's a north wall facing 13th Street, a secondary street that does not have 30% window coverage, but staff feels that because of the way it sets back off of the building and off of 13th Street, that should be considered as exempt. And Mark describes that in that paragraph toward the bottom of the screen there, and we can come back to that if there are any questions. And there is sort of an alternate plan. If Planning Commission is not comfortable with that exemption, then he's suggesting that it be included as a special land use. Some additional NMU design review standards pertaining to more window-related matters, the facade materials, the overall material quality, and you'll just kind of scan Mark's notes there, and again, it's staff's interpretation that all of those standards are in compliance. The general site development standards from Chapter 5 are listed next in order. All of the utility-related standards related to water, wastewater, pollution control. What you're seeing are the notes from the BPW staff for these respective areas: electric, communication services, broadband, and stormwater management. All of those standards, or all of those conditions listed there and notes are relatively customary, nothing out of the ordinary, and nothing that would prohibit approval from the staff standpoint. Same with fire access. Landscaping, staff feels that the landscaping plan is adequate. No real issues as well with streets, drives, and traffic flow. Same with lighting and parking. This is the first project that's come before this group with the new bicycle parking requirements, and they have satisfied the expectation there with a minimum of 4 for the commercial component. There's no signage planned at this time. No question about the building materials and environmental quality or the dumpster plan. Then there's a spot here on the report for any additional city comments, and again, there's a comment there from Brian White in Transportation Services that is not consequential. There is an expectation there that they change something on their plan related to the keying system for sediment control. And then there's one from the fire department, again, a fairly standard condition. So on to the special land use matter. The main issue, or the sole issue, I guess at this point, is the amount of commercial space that's being planned for the first floor. I'll kind of walk through the various conditions there. So the requirement per UDO, and I'll quick pull up a picture from the UDO. The requirement is, so, and this building more or less kind of replicates the building design that we're talking about. So if this is Central Avenue, UDO would require that the entire frontage of the main street be commercial, which it is in this case, and then at least 50% of the secondary street. So they do meet that requirement. And you can see there that UDO would suggest that at least a minimum of 25 feet of the main street depth be included in that commercial planning. I'll quick pull up a graphic of what they have in mind for that space. I can find it. So there you can see they meet the 50% 25-foot requirement along the secondary street. They meet the full face of the primary street, but they do not meet the 25-foot depth for the commercial along that primary street. So they are including, their plans include these 3 office spaces that are 10 by 10. So the request from the developer is the special land use would allow them to reduce that requirement from 25 feet to 10 feet along the main street, the primary street. There's a number of sections within UDO that need to be considered for Planning Commission to approve the special land use. Those sections are listed, items 1, 2, 3 there. There's a fair amount of duplication amongst those 3 sections, but I'll go through each of those sections and kind of highlight those that are the most perhaps important to consider. So section 39-404, part G, those are all basic building standards that would be required for the special land use. And if you just scan the bullets there, you see that Mark determines that they are in compliance. And I don't know, again, that I'd need to highlight each and every one of them. Yeah, it does meet the 20% commercial use requirement in number 4. Number 5, in alignment with the master plan. The developer has provided rationale, item 6, that Mark determines is reasonable. I can summarize that. The rationale for reducing the commercial requirement is kind of twofold, and perhaps the developer can speak to this at a later point, but there's an objective or a goal to pull the residential parking inside the building, which reduces the amount of space remaining for the commercial component. And they also conclude that given the proximity to downtown 8th Street, to commercial districts on 16th Street, that there's not a high demand for any particular type of commercial in this immediate area. So based on a lesser demand and an objective with what they'd like to accomplish on the property, that's the principal rationale that they've put forth. A different section, section 39-403, some additional standards to consider. Again, there's a fair amount of repetition in some of these requirements. Does it comply with other UDO requirements? Yes. Is it compatible with surrounding properties? Staff feels yes. Is there a minimal impact on surrounding properties? Staff feels that's in compliance. It looks at parking, outdoor storage, structure, massing, placement, and materials, and hours of operation. Again, no concerns noted by staff in those categories. There's no additional landscaping that would be required as a part of the special land use. No non-compliant, no non-alignment certainly with the master plan. So again, a lot of elements to consider, and I lost the rest of my report. Let me pull that back up in just a second. Hold on, sorry about that. I overloaded Adobe with too many documents. All right, I think we're getting to the end of the special land use requirements. 2 more there, 9 and 10. No detrimental effect due to environmental sorts of considerations and compatibility with the natural environment. And staff feels that there's no concerns there. You're probably familiar with the sustainability framework, and so we do an evaluation based on what the developer tells us will be some of the positive attributes of the project in terms of the kind of the triple bottom line sorts of considerations. And you'll see, if you can interpret this table here, that there are some positive impacts, such as walkability, urban tree canopy, some landscaping, softened edges, a variety of things that have a positive sustainability impact. On to conditions. There is a recommendation in relation to the special land use request that there be one condition related to the ongoing use of those main level office spaces off of Central Avenue. And I'll just read this in its entirety. A use restriction shall be added to any condominium master deed documents or residential apartment leasing requirements that the 3 ground floor offices along Central Avenue frontage shall only be used for bona fide commercial office uses, a home occupation or home-based business, or for a personal home office use. These office areas, as denoted in the site plan materials, shall not be used for bedroom or kitchen purposes. So that's looking forward and how those spaces will be used in the future, and trying to do what the city can within reason to keep those true to the intent of being commercial/office as their primary use. The remaining conditions are mostly customary, fairly common, that come to us from BPW staff and the streets department. I don't think there's anything here that's of note, all just very customary requirements as they proceed with the building process. And there was one written public comment that was received by staff leading up to today's meeting, and that was in your packet. And then finally, staff's recommendation is that following the required public hearing, that the special land use request be approved, as well as the site plan review request as proposed and contingent on noted conditions being met.
Thank you, Mark. And the applicant is present?
The applicant is present, yep.
All right.
Yep.
Feel free to come forward.
Hi, my name is Becky Page. I'm with Holland Engineering, the civil engineer in the project. Mark prepared and described a very detailed review, so I'll try not to repeat what he already stated, but this is a mixed-use building that's 3 stories with 4 residential uses within that building. And we are requesting a waiver from the percentage of commercial on that ground floor space, as he suggested. One of the reasons for that request is we are providing parking to have 2 garage spaces for each of these units. And if that 25-foot was brought back into the building, it would eliminate 3 or 4 of those parking spaces. So the intent is to keep those parking spaces. For the proposed parking, we are meeting the parking requirements by proposing the garage spaces, as well as adding an additional on-street parking space because we are abandoning the existing driveway that's on Central Avenue. So this site will only be accessed off of 13th Street, and that driveway will be enlarged for the proposed development. As Mark mentioned, the landscape buffer is proposed along the south side, showing a fence along there for privacy. As far as the stormwater requirements, we have designed it in accordance with the city's stormwater requirement and ordinance. So we will submit for the stormwater permit to meet that requirement. As far as the utilities, I know there was comment about a grease trap. One is not proposed as part of this project currently because food service is not intended to be used in that. So if that changes, we can always add that to the plan. However, I know that the developer was looking for a quieter use in that commercial space due to the proximity to the residential. I think Max, with the architect on the project, is planning to come up. If you have any questions regarding site, I'd be happy to answer them for you. So.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you can do a switch. We may come up with some later.
Appreciate it. Max Nykirk, Chet Studio Architect on the project. Want to walk through a few clarifications once. We are requesting that the percentage of commercial space be reduced to the 20% of the land use, special land use requirement. The 878 square feet that is identified in the summary is only the corner commercial space. The additional offices tied to each of those 3 residences would be above and beyond that. The 20% alone is met with only that corner unit. So what we tried to do with meeting as many of the UDO requirements in the NMU district, we had 100% requirement for commercial on Central Avenue, as well as it did allow for residential entrances to be accessed off of Central Avenue without doing the special land use. So in our approach, as Becky mentioned, we wanted 2 parking spots for each of the tenants. By doing so, that reduced not only the depth, but we could not meet the 50% requirement of commercial space on the ground floor. So we did propose that in 3 of those tenants or condos, that offices would be on the main floor, as well as having primary entrances to those units on Central Avenue. So by doing that, we pushed the residences mainly up to the 2nd floor with bedrooms on the 3rd floor. But just wanted to clarify kind of how we came to our solution in our proposed design. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Jennifer.
So I remember when we were speaking about this requirement in UDO and looking at commercial space and commercial space demand, and I see someone in the audience who is, he's hiding, Tom Postma, who is a local commercial developer, and I wondered if Tom could maybe speak to the demand for commercial space and where you see it is going right now, if there's a lot of occupancies or vacancies, and if this might justify the reduction based on demand.
Yeah, my name is Tom Postman with, we live in Washington School Flats. I also work for Collier's International, which is commercial real estate. We are downtown. I've been here for 31 years. I'm a partner in the project, so just to clarify that. We've been working on this project for about 1.5 years, and originally I think it was 20% commercial on the main floor. I listened into the last Zoom meeting, and I know where there was some discussion on that. And then we met with Mark. I heard that we had to have 50% retail on the 1st floor, which I completely disagree with. I have never had a call from somebody saying they want a retail spot in a small unit off of the main drag in my 31 years. There's a project on by Heinz there that's got commercial units on the 1st floor that are sitting vacant now for 2 years. Again, then if you get into cost of construction and the amount of rent you need for that space, it just doesn't make sense. We've got retailers on River that want to get off of River and get on 8th Street. I mean, they want high traffic. So I do not see, I see very, very little demand here for offices or commercial. I think we can fill 1 commercial unit on the corner. Really, we don't want a restriction on those residential condos that those have to be offices. Now we're going to market it to we want to market to people if they want to own something near downtown, walking downtown, and can have a home office, they can. But we don't want them to have an office there because we just, frankly, don't see a demand for it.
So you're hoping to rent these out to individuals who do not live on the property?
No, I was hoping that we would sell the 3 units, and then that person could decide what they want to do with the main floor. So that to me is almost like flex space. You know, if there's somebody who says, "Yep, I'm I'll say accountant, and we can live there. I can have my office on the 1st floor." Great. If somebody says, "I only have 1 car, I want to expand that and put a storage space in there," great. A little workshop, whatever. But if somebody wants to buy one and try to rent that out to a office user, that'd be great. But when someone calls me and says, "Will there be demand there for someone to rent that? I'm interested in buying a unit," I have to be honest with them, and I'm going to say, no, I don't think there will. So.
All right. Thank you.
And if you look at this corner too, this is the only one that's commercial. So you don't have commercial on all 3 corners here. It's just this individual lot. So.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do. I think probably best for the architect, and it has to do with the parking for those 3 commercial units. I'm not an architect, but it sure looks to me like I don't want to be the car that's parked behind. am I seeing those doors swinging in? Is anybody even going to be able to park there? It looks like that second car is going to be Ding City in that passenger side quarter panel.
Yeah,
Front
I would
quarter panel.
agree that wouldn't be the best spot, but that is, underneath the stairs, probably where it's a storage area, a limited use to get into access, under the stair in terms of storage, whether it's a mechanical, a water heater, things of that. I think that's part of the nature of living downtown in a tight, confined area. As Tom and Doug can probably mention, they're marketing these that, they're gonna be condos or sold. So living downtown, driving is limited, it's walkability, things of that nature. So when we laid these out, we did pros and cons to, like you can see the unit behind the commercial, you can park side by side. A little easier to get in and out. We look at the other 3 units as probably someone, just a couple that maybe doesn't drive very often or has a second car that's limited in use. That's where these would be ideal and kind of how those would operate.
Okay.
So, does that answer
Great.
your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Any others?
I'm curious about how the utilities for the offices would work. You have no ability for them to use a restroom or anything, correct?
The office, you're talking
The
in the
office
3?
spaces,
The 3?
the 3 separate commercial spaces.
They would be a home office tied to the condo themselves.
Okay.
So it'd be if you bought it, you would have access to go upstairs and use your
That's what I was
residence restroom.
misunderstanding.
Yeah, yep, yep. Yeah, only the corner unit would really be rented out to an individual commercial tenant.
Okay.
And that entrance off of Central would be like the principal entrance to not just the office space, but the unit itself. It goes right up the stairs to the unit.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was more of a comment, but I think the question that I would have would be, are we setting ourselves up for a precedent? And maybe that's for a later part of this, but
We will have discussion after
Okay.
we have questions for the
I'll-
developer.
I'll wait on that.
Good. Okay.
Brooke, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, he mentioned that, thanks. He mentioned that those offices could be used as flex space. So, would it be somebody's yoga studio? Would it be someone's storage room? I mean, what is that flex space if they don't need a home office? What would that, are there limitations on that, or?
I think the biggest point Tom was trying to make to not have limitations on it. It would be tied to the residential unit itself, whatever's permitted for them to occupy that. But I think the biggest distinction is those 3 spaces aren't required to meet the special land use requirement of 20%. So while we would love for them to be a home-based office, per the 20% requirement of the special land use, those aren't part of that calculation
Okay.
to meet that requirement.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? No? Great. Thank you very much.
I don't know if it should be pointed out, but I'm not, there might be a little bit of a difference in that explanation or interpretation and how the condition is currently worded in the report. So that might need some attention on your part.
Sounds good. At this time, let's see. I will open the public hearing. If you would like to come forward on this item, we are going to combine A and B, the special land use approval and the site plan review together for the public hearing. So you can make comments on either issue. You can come forward now. Just state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 5 minutes to speak.
I'm Deanne Hooksma. I live at 17 West 13th Street. And I'm going to kind of go off script. I'm not comfortable doing this, and I think this has really brought to light exactly what I think we were trying to get across when the UDO discussions were going on about NMUs. We have no problem with mixed-use buildings. We have no problem with commercial uses of buildings. But we came away from UDO with the understanding that NMUs was to have a dedicated commercial space. And that dedicated commercial space was supposed to be of a benefit to the community. And I had the same concerns, which I'm hearing expressed, is that in areas like this outside of your 8th Streets and Washington Squares and 16th Street, it's going to be hard to get people to want to have dedicated commercial space in these areas. Which brings me to what our point was, is I'll just say it, this property probably should never have been an NMU. And I think there were people on the planning commission that even thought that also. And if you are going to have this zoned as an NMU, we in the community believe that this is a blank slate. There is nothing on this piece of property. It's not like they're constrained by a building or trees or anything. You could come up with a building that meets the standards, that has the required dedicated commercial space. But what it's going to do is it's going to make it a smaller building. And you're not going to be able to have 4 condos to be able to sell. The reason they're not doing the 25 square foot back is to have a second parking space. We came away from Udo, that 2 spaces aren't required, you only need 1. And now you want to look at giving them a special use to eliminate the commercial, which should have been the dedicated reason for an NMU, to put in a second parking space. If this space is not conducive to dedicated commercial space, then I would like to ask that the developers request to have it rezoned as residential. If this is residential, then let's make it residential. If it's going to be an NMU, then the plan should be able to comply with the requirements that were put into place with Udo, because Udo, it became very clear that dedicated commercial space was a priority for these NMUs. This is going against everything that we came away thinking Udo was putting into place for an NMU. It's just very frustrating. I mean, let's use the property for what it can be used for, and let's zone it for what it should be used for, and not do exceptions to get around something that is in place in Udo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Debbie Rooks, and I would like to speak to this project on a personal level and on a professional level.
Can you state your address for the record, please?
Sure, 47 East 14th Street. So I live right around the corner from this proposed development. What I am positive about this project is that it is requiring 2 parking spaces. They're making room for more people to park their vehicles out of sight. I think that's a bonus. Another thing too, coming off of COVID, if I'm a professional, I have a great spot to have a home office that the public can come to my office and not have to go through my house to meet with me in my office. So I see that as being a very positive influence for a lot of couples or single people who want to work out of their home. I also think the aesthetics on the exterior look great as well. I was on the board of Jubilee, and when we did Maple and 14th, it had a lot of the similar building exterior look, and I think it was positive. That was a 6 condo unit right there in the middle of a neighborhood. I've lived in my home for like 7 years now, and I would say this would be an asset on that corner. I do understand, you know, other people having concerns about maybe more congestion or whatever it might mean for them, but I know this builder. I worked on the Washington School project. I was the interior designer on that project. I think that was a bonus to the neighborhood, and I can see this also being a bonus to this neighborhood. So, and it's my neighborhood. So, yes, it's reduced commercial use. I see that as a bonus. I don't know. So that's what I hear when I'm a neighbor, and also as a professional working with this group. They have very good integrity. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on this item can come forward at this time. Okay, I will close the public hearing. And now it is time for discussion among commission members. Go for it.
Yeah, I think that part of my hesitation or part of my wondering with this would be, you know, the intention behind the Udo in the NMU space, and you know, are we setting ourselves up for an issue with precedent by essentially allowing this to be a residential use. It's slated as commercial, but it's entirely tied within the residential unit, so it technically couldn't be a commercial use outside of that person who owns that property. So I wonder if there's a concern from other commission members about the fact that it really doesn't serve as an actual commercial space.
I guess I would agree with you on that, and the fact that, yes, you know, we've just established what NMU means, and now we're allowing a major exception, first shot out of the gun.
Right.
But I thought the proposed commercial use in the corner is actually rentable outside
Oh,
of
yeah,
housing.
yeah,
So
there is a little-
that meets the criteria. It's just the office does not meet the criteria. I mean, my feedback is on our discussion when we talked about this 50% with Udo. We said, is 50% the right number? We don't know. And I also heard the discussion related to when we have projects that need something different, bring it to us to discuss as part of Udo. Because I feel like that 50% was kind of like our best guess. And there was a lot of talk about what's the future of commercial in space and where there'll be vacancies with COVID, and we didn't know at the time. So this is now a project for us to consider that's outside.
Yeah.
First of all, Ms. Huxma, thank you. I know it's difficult to come up and talk in front of us. I could have said every word that you said up there. I feel exactly the same way about this. It's a beautiful project. It's a beautiful development. I could see myself living in one of these condos. You know, I've got a small office. In the future, I might be somebody who might want to live in this, but I don't think that it meets the intent of what we had with Udo and with NMU. And I think that the developers have said, or the applicants have said essentially that those three offices in the front are not really designed to be commercial spaces for the general public. They're designed to be perhaps home offices, perhaps satellite offices for the folks that live there. And the other issue that I had with this is in regard to the rationale of asking for the special uses, that there's other commercial in the area that's better, that there's not a demand here for it, there's not a demand for this type of thing. I think that the remedy for that is asking to have the property rezoned. If the property can't be used and it's for the purpose that it's zoned, that perhaps asking for a rezoning of it is, but I don't think the special use permit is there, and I am concerned that this would set a precedent right out of the gun, or shot right out of the gun. Was it right out of the starting gate? One of those, mixing my metaphors with that.
Fresh out of the gate. There you go.
Fresh out of the gate, thank you. Yeah, because it's a beautiful development. It's a beautiful building. It really is. I really like it a lot. I would love to be able to see this building somewhere, but I'm not sure this is the right space for it based on the size of the lot that's there. I don't think that it meets with the intent of the Udo. And we are. This is the first one. It's great, but I agree with Ms. Huxma. It's the idea behind NMU in those conversations that we had. My recollection of it is that it is going to provide that commercial space that's going to serve that particular neighborhood, that there's going to be a use there. It's going to help increase walkability. It's going to help create more neighborhoods, small commercial zones. As somebody who actually lives in one or works in one of those small areas with a grocery store, an auto repair store, and a small legal office, it does help some anchoring for the neighborhood. It helps create a sense of place. And that's one of the ideas behind NMU. And I would love to be able to see this. And frankly, moving one of those cars out of that garage helps provide that additional space, may make those more rentable. We had conversations here about how many parking spaces do we need? How many parking spaces do we want? Do we have an intent for? And I've got a question coming up later as part of those Udo wording changes, that spaces need to be independently accessible. And my question was, does that language apply here as well? Because these certainly are not independently accessible. And as somebody who at one time had a one-stall garage with a one-lane driveway, independent accessibility is awfully difficult when your cars are stacked up like that. So yeah, I'm inclined to vote no on the special use on this.
I have to say, in Los Angeles, you have cars parked like this all the time.
And that's
So
why
it's a
we
pretty
live-
common
That's why we
thing.
live here.
Right.
I was hoping to hear answers to those questions from the developer, and I did not.
Which questions, Dave?
How this, in fact, this property helps the neighborhood.
Mm.
Because yes, I too live in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard that.
My concern was that I actually don't have an issue with cars being outside at all. I live in this neighborhood as well, and I think that's part of the downtown feel is cars are typically parked outside because not everybody has a double stall garage. So I don't see the justification for not having that 20% commercial on the first floor and having the 2 cars stacked. And I would rather see the use be with the zone, and someone could have a small, long space, commercial space in there, or they can convert it and buy all 3 spaces, just to be able to have that flexibility on that main floor and that other portion in those 3 units. But I think too that it would require a rezoning for this use to be used on this lot. Anyone else?
I know, I agree with everything everyone said, so I agree. I love the building, it's great. I think coming out of COVID in terms of having a space that you can use, it makes sense. It's just a matter of it's not the right fit for this spot. And I think that's the challenging part for here, where we've come back and forth quite a bit, but I definitely agree that NMU is really looking to be able to help the neighborhood, and I don't see that here. It's more we're trying to make it fit. And I think at this point, you know, with those offices, you could have 3 individual commercial spaces, smaller for startup companies that don't need 1,000 square feet. They want something small to kind of get the ground running. So that could be another way of marketing to a different population that's out there. So I would agree that I would still want to see more commercial.
My other concern would be that these office spaces would turn into storage on the main floor, which I would not want to see, especially in that neighborhood.
Well, and that was definitely something we talked about. I remember having that conversation when we were discussing how much commercial and if a commercial could be converted to
Yes.
residential.
On Maple and 13th.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what's
We were
happened.
talking about that,
Yeah.
yep. And we wanted to avoid that.
Yeah, and as we've heard tonight, that you can't rent commercial spaces unless you're on 8th Street. I mean, should the lot remain commercial?
That's my question, is that, you know, the demand for commercial space where it is now and that location being so close to downtown, is it a small coffee shop? Does it does that have to be neighborhood mixed use? Because I agree, I just don't know if we're trying to force a round hole in a square peg and saying this is what we need here, but if the market, as Tom said, is not really pushing for something like this, then the lot will just stay vacant.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Would you like a motion?
I will take one, yes.
All right. I move we deny the special
We need
land.
2 motions, I'm sorry.
Okay, first one is going to be in regard to the special land use request.
Yes.
I move we deny the special land use request based on 2 items. The rationale that was given by the applicant in regard to the fact that there's other commercial in the area, so that there's not demand for this type of thing, I don't think meets the requirement. And then the second is I don't believe that this meets the intent of UDO. I believe that the intent was to provide services for the neighborhood, additional walkability, particularly neighborhood commercial uses. And the applicant, I think, made it very clear. I was actually very glad to hear the applicant say that they didn't anticipate that those 3 10-by-10-foot offices would actually be used as commercial spaces, but rather as something as storage or your own personal home office or those types of things. So for that reason, I move that we deny the request.
And I'd support that.
All right. Do you want to do a roll call, Mallory?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, the motion is to deny Box,
Yes.
DeBlock,
Yes.
Owens,
No.
Raymond,
Yes.
Orm,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes.
Bosch,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion to deny passes.
And I think based on that, we make a motion to deny the site plan approval on this as well. I think that's probably a foregone conclusion in regard, based on what happened with the first. Can't approve the site plan if they don't get the special use request. So I move that
Correct.
we deny the site plan approval.
Support.
All right, go ahead, Mallory.
All right, the motion is to deny Box,
Yes.
DeBlock,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Bosch,
Yes.
Orm,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes.
Owens,
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion to deny passes.
All right. Thank you for coming in tonight. Moving on to the next item, 170 West 22nd Street. Rezoning request from traditional neighborhood residential district to the planned unit development, PUD district. Applicant is Jack Heising with Holland Community Aquatic Center. Shall I read the next one too, Mark?
Sure.
And the next item is pertaining to the same property, and it's the development plan approval request comprised of the most recently approved site plan as well as a specific request for the corridor mixed use, the CMU, zone district signage rights, approval of existing building height, and a waiver of the residential component in section 39-2.19.c.2 of the Unified Development Ordinance. Mark, do you write all of these?
Did I write that? I think Mallory pulled that off of something or another.
Mark Vanderpoog wrote those.
Okay. I'm sorry if that was very monotone. That was.
So
quite
I'll do
long.
something similar here. I'll walk us through the report. It's not as lengthy of a report. Mark did actually help with this report as well because he has some history with this project. And the history starts in that first paragraph there, just talks about the Holland Community Pool being built in the 60s and then being remodeled in the 90s, and then a substantial remodel again planned in 2019. That's continuing or somewhat evolving. What brought this project to the meeting today is that, and sorry about the complexity of the issue, but when Udo passed and the zoning map was enacted, I believe it's fair to say that it was a bit of an oversight that this particular site, being zoned TRN, but being under, what's the terminology, a conditional use permit from 2000, or from 1990, I believe. That's when the conditional use permit began. Udo no longer recognizes conditional use permits. So it wasn't necessarily a life or death matter. The pool or the aquatic center could have continued as a legal non-conforming site, but that did not fit with some ongoing plans that the aquatic center has, in particular around some signage on the building. That would not have been permitted because the signage ordinances that would have applied now post-Udo is the TRN signage, which would have been grossly inadequate for what they're hoping to put on the building. So that's just a little bit of history. So really what we're doing today, as you read the summaries of the motions, the applicant is seeking rezoning of the property as a PUD, and then part of that includes accepting or approving the site plan, which this body approved in 2019 already, pretty much as is, with a slight amendment earlier this year to the north side of the building, a relatively minor amendment. And again, because this body approved the site plan and the staff, the BPW staff, the street staff, the engineers have all looked at this site plan, there's really no issues at all with the site plan itself. And a review of the rezoning criteria also did not produce any concerns with moving forward with the rezoning.
So the rezoning, Mark, doesn't change any of the setbacks or the design or anything like that?
The PUD will just incorporate the site plan as it currently is. So all
Okay.
the setbacks will be what they are at this moment. So there were a couple of specific items that will be brought into the PUD, namely the height of the building being approved, both as is and moving forward. And then adopting the signage ordinances that apply to the CNU district, which is adequate for the aquatic center staff. They feel like that gives them the freedom to do the type of signage that they have in mind. The only site plan issue that was kind of new post-UDO is the bicycle parking requirements, but we worked through with the staff there around what their current plans are and concluded that it meets the spirit of what the UDO is looking for a facility such as this and the demands for bicycle parking. So that was one sort of new issue that we needed to look at relative to the site plan. I could walk through the rezoning request criteria, but I don't think it's necessary. There's just, again, in summary, there's just no concerns on the part of staff with what this rezoning would mean for that particular site and for the future use.
Just for clarification, Mark, the PUD includes a public pool facility?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the conditions on page 4 are the ones that I just mentioned. The signage rights shall be equivalent to those contained within the CMU section of the UDO. Brian White from the Transportation Department did request one additional condition, namely that directional signage in the parking lots and off of the streets go through the traffic committee before final approval. The maximum building height shall be and remain at 53 feet. And then the item you just addressed, the property shall be limited to use as an indoor aquatic facility. Oh, and then yes, there's one, a PUD, a standard PUD requirement is that there is a residential component. So that's not a feasible addition to that particular property, so.
Nobody that works there wants to live there, huh?
Right, that's an additional, or not an additional, that's a waiver request to implement into the PUD that the residential component not be required.
Okay.
So we have a two-part recommendation following a public hearing that the Planning Commission approve a recommendation to City Council that the applicant's request to rezone this property as a planned unit development be approved. And then recommendation number 2, following a public hearing, that Planning Commission approve the proposed development plan, the site plan, with all the conditions noted. They did hold a public meeting on September 8th, and those notes from that meeting are included in the packet.
Pertaining to specifically?
To the rezoning and the site plan.
Okay.
Yep.
Mark, could you do me a favor, refresh my memory on what the signage rights are under CMU? I mean, are there any concerns there? I can't remember right off the top of my head what that allows them to do or not do.
I'm wondering if Tricia can step in here. She's
All right.
our sign guru.
Make sure you lower the microphone.
Yes.
And we can all hear you.
CMU. And I believe in previous conversations, it's my understanding that they're specifically looking for a wall sign, not necessarily ground signage, but a sign to be placed on the wall of the building. The sign that was there before had to be removed because that's where the addition got put. So sometimes we can do non-conforming signs and work with them with what was there and get something new. That was not feasible in this situation. So CMU allows a wall sign to take up a maximum area of 10% of the face of the wall. So we calculate the entire face of the wall, 10% of that face can be used for signage. And there are no other restrictions as far as lighting, illumination, electronic message centers, just 10% of the wall mounted flat to the face of the wall. and they may have wall signage on each individual wall of the building around the perimeter.
So they can have an electronic LED sign on the side of the building that's facing the residences?
It would be across the street, but yes.
Is there any review that we get to do of that before it goes up, or is that just by right?
As they are here requesting a rezoning and the site plan, it's my understanding that the planning commission could put limitations if they wanted to limit the types of signs installed or locations.
Okay. But they could potentially, in this zone district, could put one on every wall, but no more than 10% of that wall. Okay. Thank you, Tricia.
Do we have to put those restrictions in place now, or are we allowed to make one of our conditions that any signage is reviewed by planning commission? Are we required to put those those sign requirements in place now? We don't have the ability to say subject to approval by planning commission.
No, because planning commission does not review sign applications.
Just staff?
So if it's
Just staff
if
does.
it's in a PUD zone district, we go with whatever the planning commission determined when the site plan was approved for that PUD.
Okay.
So no, if you wanna do it, you should do it now. And Dan reminded me as well that in the CMU district, the freestanding signs, if they chose to do a freestanding sign, could be similar to signs you would see down Washington Avenue. Really tall, 25 feet.
You're talking about
70
South Washington?
Yes, thank you. 25 feet in height, 75 square feet in area. So again, I don't think they're planning to do that, but if you do approve signage per the CMU district, and we can pull this page up if folks want to take a look at what else is on this page, it does allow large signs, because it's typically corridor areas on fast roads.
Sure.
With lots of traffic.
I may, just for the applicant's knowledge, we may have some questions for you in regard to what you're thinking about for signage.
He gave you the
Why don't
thumbs
we
up.
Listen to their presentation.
Yes,
Yeah, we will
yeah,
do
I don't
that,
want
definitely.
to, that's,
Conversation.
right.
Yep.
It's page 215.
My guess is, I bet you. Oh, okay.
Oh, actually, might be. It's numbered 215. So you might have to go down a little further. It's
Mark, are you good on your presentation, though?
Yes, keep scrolling down.
Oh, okay.
They're at the top, keep going down. Down to the next page, this
Okay.
one.
Yep.
So
Uh,
go up a little bit. So this is the CMU.
Just minimize the percentage, and then we can see the whole thing, probably all at once there. But Mark, are you good on your presentation piece?
I am, yep. I would just note
Okay.
that the applicant does have a couple of representatives here, Greg Mayberry
Yep.
and Amanda Dynstra.
Definitely. I wanted to invite you guys up to speak on this item. Yes. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Greg Mayberry, 293 Little Station Road. I'm on the north side of Holland. Interesting signage comments. The motivation, and we really want to thank the staff for helping the Aquatic Center through the process, is we were unaware of the UDO restrictions that were enacted this summer. We had the big Holland Community Aquatic Center letters across the front that we removed. Each of those letters is 2 feet and 3 inches in height. If we were to put those back, we could get 5 of those letters back within the traditional neighborhood residential sign. So we felt that we needed to do something to help expand our capability to identify the building. The south face is the front door. That's the face that is towards the hospital, towards the parking lot. That's where we envision our signage on the wall. We envision a logo, lettering with the name of the building. There is a 45-degree angle space on the southeast corner, which may have a logo or some smaller lettering. Signage is expensive. Our plans are not to have signage all the way around. what we are trying to do is minimize the impact, especially on the north side of the building, to the residents. So we're trying to incorporate, as through our landscaping plan, more green items to help shield the face of the building as opposed to advertise it. We do anticipate some type of signage at the corners of 22nd and Maple and potentially 22nd and Washington as users of the facility come from out of town, so they know that they are approaching the aquatic center. Those are most likely monument signs. We don't have a sign plan yet. We'd be happy to share the sign plan. 75-foot tall monument sign probably won't take place, but we do want to make sure that the users of the facility can find the facility. In fact, we want to work with Brian White and Transportation to have some type of signage at 22nd and Michigan to direct people towards the aquatic center along Moran Park. It's kind of an athletic area with Moran Park and the aquatic center, so we see this as a good use of just identifying the property. The staff worked with us on what we should request. The PDU seemed to make sense. The Holland Hospital unit is a PDU directly south of us. They have building size and signage that's comparable to what we would anticipate. Our building already is 53-foot high, so it's an existing height. Just need to identify that that's part of the PDU requirement. We don't have any residence capability on the site, and the signage, the corridor mixed use, was recommended as the appropriate signage requirement or regulation that we should fall into. So we're following the staff's guidance on this, and clearly the Planning Commission can help guide us some more.
Thank you.
I have a question for the
Yeah.
applicant. Is there anything in the timing of our decision on this that's going to slow you guys down at all? I'll tell you where I'm headed with that, and that is if we table this and give you the opportunity to talk to Brian White and talk to staff and get a signage plan in front of us, is that going to cause you a problem?
Our goal is to have the first public reading with the City Council in October, the second reading in November with approval, and then there's a 3-week delay for signage. We would like to have the building is slated to be completed at the end of this year, open in early January. So yes, a delay would impact our ability to identify the building for its opening.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for the applicant? No?
Signage you're planning is just fixed, not electronic, not splashy, something
We
that's
are
gonna-
still working through that. We
Okay.
don't know if we need to light the signs on the
Yep.
building. If there's, it's not, we don't see a storyboard type sign LED,
Yes.
but there may be an illuminated logo on the building directly on the main stairwell. The entrance is directly to the south. Above it is an emergency stairwell having a round, similar to the City of Holland sign there, but it could be backlit or illuminated in some fashion, but it would not be flashing lights. It would be just a static lit.
No
That's
flashing LEDs or scrolling?
No.
Okay.
We have to get power up there to do that.
Yes.
I think static is the word we want
Yeah.
in the resolution.
Any other questions?
I will say that we were looking at the sign ordinance, and I think Mark's got the open space and airport zone pulled up. And if Planning Commission wanted to approve signage per the OS and A districts, that would still get them 10% of the wall area, but limits the freestanding signs to 6 feet in height and 32 square feet in area, which may be more compatible with the residential areas. Still would allow the flashing, blinking unless that's specifically not allowed by planning commissioners.
All right. That's
Okay.
helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this does require a public hearing. At this time, I will open a public hearing on these 2 items, the rezoning and the development plan items. If you'd like to speak to either of these, you can come forward at this time. I will close the public hearing. And now it is time for discussion or questions or comments among commission members.
I'm ready to make a motion.
I agree. You have the language
Okay.
in mind?
I think I have the language in
Does
in
anyone
mind.
have any questions or comments?
We can always discuss after there's a motion on the floor.
That's
Yeah.
true. We can do that before the roll call, yes.
Okay. So I recommend that the Planning Commission approve a recommendation to City Council that the applicant's request to rezone 170 West 22nd Street as a planned unit development be approved, subject to the following conditions. A, signage rights shall be equivalent to those contained within the OA section of the UDO, with the further restrictions that there is no flashing, no blinking, no movement of the lights on those signs. B, any signage, including directional signage, requested by the Aquatic Center be placed within the public right-of-way shall be reviewed by the City Traffic Committee prior to final approval. C, maximum building height shall be 53 feet, which is consistent with the existing plan. D, use of property shall be limited to use as an indoor aquatic facility. And E, the residential component of the UDO, section 39-2.19.c.2, comma, shall be waived, period. That's the motion.
It's the longest motion I've heard.
I would second that.
Is there any discussion before we take roll call? No? All
I'd
right.
like to see static in the parenthesis in that, when we talk about lighting.
Static lighting only?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go for that, because I think that helps define what we're talking about. So it can be lighted, must be static, can't be flashing, can't be blinking, can't be moving.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Mallory?
Okay, so the motion is to approve the recommendation of the rezoning with the listed conditions. Box,
Yes.
DeBlock,
Yes.
Owens,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Orm,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes.
Bosch,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Can I make a post-motion comment, if I may?
I will allow it.
All right. I want to thank staff on this. Thank you. That was really, really very helpful, and thanks to the applicant as well, to try to work our way through a solution to this, because I think this does make a whole lot of sense to go through this, and I love the creativity and working together. That's what I really hope that we continue to do in the future. I know that's who we are. I know that's what you guys do. I just want to let you know that it's greatly appreciated.
Yes, and we knew that some of these things with Udo would come up
Yes.
as well. So we
Mhm.
appreciate the Aquatic Center having to come back to us on this one.
We also now have to approve the site plan?
We do. We have to move on to letter D and actually do a separate motion for that as well.
So
Right.
moved.
As
Support.
is?
Pardon?
As is?
Oh,
No conditions,
We have,
correct?
well, with the conditions that are noted.
Aforementioned noted conditions.
So you made the motion, Dave?
Sure.
Yep, I'll support that.
You're such a great team tonight. Mallory?
All right, the motion is to approve the development plan. Box,
Yes.
DeBlock,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Bosch,
Yes.
Orm,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes.
Owens,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes.
Great. Thanks for spending your evening with us,
Yes.
and have a great evening.
Well, they sat out the storm with us.
They sat out the
The
storm
evening
with
is
us.
just ahead of
Yes. All right. Letter E, text amendments to Chapter 39, Unified Development Ordinance. Is this Tricia? Is Tricia Dreyer speaking on behalf of this item?
You'll be seeing me a lot.
Oh, really?
Until we get all the twerks out of the document.
Do you want the staff report or the red line?
The staff report, not the red line. No. So, we're here to talk about UDO changes. And just a heads up, we'll be talking about it at the study session in October too.
Okay.
Yes.
We have some potential questions for planning commission members. We'll get you that information ahead of time. We've realized there's a couple of things that were in the previous code that were accidentally omitted in this code. And in reviewing some of that information, staff is thinking maybe we want to take a different direction. So we'll get you some information and we'll welcome your feedback to make sure that we're moving in the right direction as we move forward with the new code. But tonight, we're talking about stuff that we talked about last month. So just minor updates. So Mark, if you could scroll to the next page. This is much easier than me having to do it myself. So this is a spreadsheet of the changes that are before you tonight for the UDO. So on the left-hand column, I've got the type of update, if it was a typo, if we're asking for clarification, if staff made an error, because that does happen occasionally, or if it's a change from what we had in the previous code. And then in the column B, we have the code section. In column C, we ask if it existed in the previous code. Sometimes they did, sometimes these are new regulations. And then the suggested change. So the items on this page are all very minor. So the first one, we need to make a correction to a section that's referenced. The second one, we want to clarify that in the industrial zone district, a large portion of that zone is included in the airport overlay district, which then sets additional criteria for folks wanting to build in the industrial zone district. So that's just a clarification. The next one was a staff error. We discussed this at the study session where there's one block along Michigan Avenue between 27th and 28th Street where we had intended to allow for a 4-story building in the future. It's currently a vacant lot. It's currently in the UDO being shown on a map as a 2-story building. So we just would like to correct that staff error and show it as a 4-story building. Number 6 is a clarification. So in some of our corridor areas where we do allow outdoor sales, we would like to put back in that those are seasonal sales. So for example, Ace Hardware on Lincoln Avenue is allowed to sell bark outside in the summer and lawnmowers in the summer, but we really want their outdoor sales to be limited to seasonal merchandise. We don't need snow blowers out there in July because that cramps the parking lot and then clutters things up. So we want to add back in the seasonal, and then also we want to clarify that 20% of each yard area may be used for that outdoor seasonal storage. We don't want anybody using 100% of the front yard for seasonal storage with the rationale that, well, I'm not using either side or rear, so I want to add all my 20% together and put it all in the front. So that's just a clarification. Number 7, we talked about last month that we have different criteria for fire access roads and public roads as far as height above the roads for utility lines. So we just need to clarify that section as well. Number 8 is a clarification to the name of one of the sections in the sign ordinance. So signs that are permitted with a permit follows right after signs that are allowed without a permit. So we just need to clarify the name change on that. Number 9 was a staff error omission. The design review board in the form-based code districts downtown, upon a meeting of the design review board, does have the authority to allow a larger wall sign if it's appropriate and compatible with the building and the architecture in that particular location. That was in the old code and we failed to carry it through to the new code. Again, number 10 is clarifying the independently accessible parking spaces. So if you have 2 required parking spaces per dwelling unit, in order to count as a parking space, it does need to be independently accessible. Stacked parking spaces do not count as independently accessible parking spaces. And then on the next page, number 11 there, this is a change. So we recognized after we had received an application for a ground floor accessory dwelling unit that the code requires ground floor accessory dwelling units to actually be shorter than a detached accessory building that would house a vehicle. Staff doesn't see any important reason why those should be different heights, and we think they should be the same. That would make our job a lot easier, would make explaining code regulations to citizens a lot easier if all detached accessory buildings get to be the same height, no matter if they're used as an accessory dwelling unit or a detached garage.
Can I ask her a question on that one?
Sure.
What does that, is that more of a change to other detached accessory buildings, or is it more of a change to ADUs? So in other words, I'm assuming we're pulling one into compliance with the other. What are we doing there?
We get a lot of garages. A lot of garages are tall. We have very few detached ADUs on the ground floor. So
Okay.
we want to bring them up to allow them to meet the same standards as a garage.
Okay.
So garages all over the place.
Okay.
We may right now only have one ground floor ADU, and someone wants to do a second one.
Okay.
So we said, yeah, it would be cool if you could build it to the same height as a garage.
Mm-hmm.
Is that standard, 16 feet standard for a garage?
Yes, average roof height.
Oh, is it like what about the pole buildings that are on 14th Street? There's a couple of pole barns in the yard.
Are they existing?
Yeah, but they're garages.
If they're existing, they may have been constructed prior to the adoption of this code or the previous code. So they could be existing non-conforming. But if you build a new detached garage today, your average median roof height cannot be taller than 16 feet. Unless you're in the historic district and you get a special waiver from the historic district.
Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to code language. Number 12, again, was a staff error that the DDA needs to be added into that chart because they oversee stuff in the form-based code downtown districts. Number 13 was also a staff error. The application deadline needs to be, should be 28 days for planning commission applications to be submitted to staff so we can process them, and 15 business days for administrative review. So that was an oversight on our part when we were transcribing information. Same thing with number 14, Board of Appeals, should be 21 days before the meeting, not 30 days. And then 15 is just a staff error and a clarification that we fixed the definition of a flag lot to actually be what a flag lot means. Number 16 is a change. So in the UDO today, we have several sections that are titled residential 1 to 4 units. So for example, accessory buildings have standards for residential 1 to 4 units. Driveways have standards for residential 1 to 4 units to differentiate them from commercial uses, industrial uses, apartment buildings, because the needs are very different for a single family house versus a church or a commercial building. So along with that change that's already been adopted into UDO, we thought it was imperative to also create a definition of what does 1 to 4 mean. Is it 1 to 4 units? Is it condos? Is it apartments? Is it per parcel? So we added the definition that residential 1 to 4 is 1 to 4 residential dwelling units on one parcel. So it could be a single family house, could be a 4-unit apartment building, but if it's a 5-unit apartment building on one parcel, it kicks it into a different set of regulations. So that's really just, it's a change, but it's a clarification. So I explained to Mark Vanderplug that I did do the red line, but he wanted me to do the red line of these sections with the entire section. So I think UDO is, we'll say 350 pages. So my red line is like 280 pages. So I'm not gonna go through the red line.
Thank you.
But it's in there, and if you want to look up any of these specific changes to look at the wording, I'm more than happy to
It's
take.
in the packet, it's public knowledge, it's accessible, yes, thank you.
And the other, I have one question for Mayor Box and Councilmember Raymond. This, if approved by Planning Commission tonight, needs to go to City Council. These two changes that we're proposing, do you think they are substantive enough that we should have a study session with council before we do first reading and then public hearing?
I think it ought to be at least regular agenda so that the council has the ability to get the same kind of explanation. I don't think it requires a full study session. I think 10 or 15 minutes in a study session, maybe. But I think it's going to be important for council to know and for the public to know, especially with the two change items, because there was enough concern in the public in regard to Udo and things, especially in regard to accessory dwelling units. I want to make sure that people are aware that, yes, these are changes, but these are not substantive changes that are necessarily going to allow additional accessory dwelling units or additional number of units on a particular parcel, those types of things.
So do you think maybe 15 minutes during the second, where we have the public hearing on the second reading? Or should we just do a short time during one of the regular study session agendas?
I'd do it on the study session on the front end so that council doesn't get surprised about it on the back end. That would be my recommendation. Lynn, does that make sense to you too?
Okay, awesome. Any additional questions?
No. All right.
Progress feels good.
All right, this does require a public hearing. So at this time, I will open a public hearing on these items. Anyone wants to come forward? And seeing as there is not anyone coming forward, I will close the public hearing. Any discussion or motions among commission members?
I move we approve the recommendation of staff in regard to these changes.
Support by Dave. And Mallory.
Whole day.
Since we're doing roll call with all the other ones, we might as well follow suit.
All right. The motion is to approve Box,
Yes.
DeBlock,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes.
Owens,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Orm,
Yes.
Bosch,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes.
Thank you very much. Communications and petitions, scheduling of public hearings. There are none, correct?
Correct.
All right, communication from commission members? No. During the study session, we said goodbye to Andy Kenyon,
We did.
and we welcomed our new member, correct? Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Orm. You can call me Jen. I am the staff representative, and I'm the HR director for the city of Holland. Also a resident.
Yes, thank you, Jen. So we have two newish members, and they're both on the side over here, so.
I know.
And our
Newville.
new staff person starts on Monday.
A new staff person,
Yes.
a new city planner starts Monday, correct? Can you give us any more information, Tricia?
His name is Steve.
Oh, can you
His
come to
name
the
is Steve.
microphone so
Can
that
you come to
everyone
the
at home, because
microphone? Yes.
we have a wide and deep audience for these meetings, and I'm sure they're
Yes.
going to be interested in hearing that.
Glued to their
Mhm.
television sets.
Yes.
Yes, his name is Steve Peterson. And he was going to try to make it tonight, but had a conflict and was not able to attend. So I was involved with Jen with the first interview.
Yep.
That went well, and then they did a second round interview. Is he from Cascade? Do you recall?
Yes.
Cascade Township?
Cascade Township, correct.
Okay, yep.
Yes, and he has lots of years of experience. And we're super excited to have him, and he's looking forward to a new challenge.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great hire.
Communications from staff.
That was it.
That was it. Yeah, we kind of combined the two, I guess, huh? That's okay. Motion for adjournment.
Move we adjourn.
Support by Dave? All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. I don't think anybody's opposed, right? All right, sounds good. Have a good night.